Hello everyone. This is going to be a bit of a off-the-cuff sort of very improv video. Seeing as it's been a year since the debut of Less is Morgue, I thought it would be a fun little thing to do to commemorate that occasion by regaling you all with the story of how I actually got involved with the team. For those of you who don't know, Less is Morgue is a horror comedy podcast that I am one of the writers on. I've also voice acted in it a couple of times. But Less is Morgue is also the coolest and most exciting and fulfilling creative project I've ever worked on. It's the first thing I've done where I'm writing in a public capacity. It's not just writing stuff for myself that then gets locked away and never seen by anyone or only shared with friends, but this is something that's going out to the world and to people, and there's something really exciting about that, because people have been very complimentary of the show, and we've received some really lovely reviews and some really lovely tweets, and I thought, in honor of it being a full year since the first episode dropped, I'd talk a little bit more about how I became involved and what I actually do behind the scenes. So, for well over a year now, I've been a part of the Prapes Collective, the team behind Less is Morgue. But I first got involved with them through Henry Galley, who a lot of people will know from his work on, besides Less is Morgue, Conjuria, and The Hidden Frequencies, and other podcasts. So Henry and I met at university during first year. We were both studying English literature and creative writing. So yeah, we had a class together in first year, and then we had a couple together in second year, and it was actually during that time that we sort of agreed to live together. Because that's how it works at uni. If you know someone and you get on with them well enough, they're a viable candidate to live with and, split rent with, because that's just how it works. Henry shared a lot of his work with me and sent me sort of stuff that he'd done, and I was always sort of like really excited to see that, oh wow, like this is someone who not only that I know, but I am a contemporary of. Like, he's in my classes and he's getting work produced. I remember very vividly like him sending me an episode of The Hidden Frequencies that he wrote, which you can find. I'll put a link to it in the description. And I think that's what really got me started with the bug that I then got, which was I'd never written for audio. I'd never written for an audio medium. After sort of hearing that, I was like, wow, I'd love to do like a podcast or like an audio series on YouTube or something. That's really what started it, was sort of hearing some of Henry's other work. Cut to the summer of 2019. This is before we'd actually officially started living together. Henry and I had been sort of chatting on and off over the summer, and I'd ended up getting a really shitty retail job. I won't name the company I worked for legal reasons, but it's a supermarket chain in the UK, and that's all I'll say. But needless to say, I didn't enjoy it, but it was while I was on the way to work that Henry first approached me about Less is Morgue. I live in a very small town in England, and the job I had was sort of in the outskirts of London, so in order to go from my home to my job, I had to take a train. And it was while I was on the train to work that Henry first messaged me about Less is Morgue. He said, and I remember this very vividly, he said, "Can I share something with you that I'm insanely proud of?" Having both seen and heard some of his work before, I was like, yeah, sure, I'd love to have a look. And it was actually the pitch document and the first 3 episode scripts for Less is Morgue. And I remember sitting on the train reading through the material that Henry had sent me and absolutely losing it, and properly laughing out loud, not just sort of like the exhale you do when you look at a meme, but like proper belly laughing at what I was reading. And immediately I fell in love with the characters and the world that was being put forward here in these episodes, and something really clicked with me. And I remember turning around saying to Henry, hey, look, if you want someone to be in this, I'd be more than happy to be involved. It's worth noting that at the time, because I was so interested in writing for an audio medium, I also really wanted to try my hand at voice acting, and I'm in no way a professional. I've studied acting, but it's not my profession, it's not my chosen career. But for some reason, I've always kind of wanted to try voice acting, so I said to him, hey, if you want someone to be in this, I'd be more than happy to have a crack at it. And Henry then turned around and said to me, yeah, or, you could write for it. And I thought, oh, yeah, that other thing that I'm actually studying that's actually my career. Yeah, I could do that too. It was extremely validating to be asked by a friend and contemporary to be involved in something, because I'm someone who constantly doubts his ability, especially when it comes to writing, especially when it comes to my work and my ability to write things that are good. So having Henry sort of basically extend this tremendous opportunity to me, I got extremely lucky. I don't think my experience is at all like a universal one. I think sometimes you have to really pursue any potential opportunity, or if a show or if a podcast or something, or if a project speaks to you, then chase it. I stayed in touch with Henry, over that summer, even while I was working this job I didn't like. I made sure to keep up with him and say, look, is there anything you need me to do preliminary? Is there any, when do we get started? When's the first episode dropping? Like I said, I know my experience in becoming a part of this show and this world of audio and podcasts, which is not something I had any experience in prior. It's not a universal experience. I consider myself actually very lucky, and not in a sort of disdain on everyone else way. I genuinely feel humbled to have been given the opportunity to become a part of this show. Cut to September of the same year, and Henry and I are living together along with one other, and Henry's partner Meg, who many people will know as the voice of Evelyn from Less is Morgue. So the first thing that I did for Less is Morgue was I recorded on their Yeti. I recorded for Brother Podonius in episode 8, The Day of the Schlorp, and Norm Last Name from episode 18, Camp Nightmare. But of course, when I joined, all of season 1 was pretty much written. There have been like edits and a few like little tweaks here and there, but the main 31 episodes of season 1 had already been written by the time I joined. I was a little daunted because, again, like linking back to what I said earlier about being someone who doesn't really do great at self-validating, I had kind of told myself and gotten into this mindset that there were certain genres I didn't know how to write for because I just hadn't tried. It was less of a case that I didn't have the ability, it was more of a case that I just hadn't had a crack at it. But I sort of took it as read that I couldn't write certain genres, and 2 of those were horror and comedy. And cut to now, and I'm writing for a horror comedy podcast. Rather than sort of shying away from those genres, around the time I was sort of realizing that I'd like to try my hand at writing for audio, I was sort of telling myself I'd like to have a go at writing horror and a go at writing comedy. A lot of the horror stuff that I wrote ended up forming my coursework for university, but the comedy part was obviously old stuff I did for Less is Morgue. So I actually started writing for Less is Morgue. I didn't immediately go into writing full episodes, but what I instead did was started smaller, and I started by writing 2 of the weird ads, which have yet to appear in the series as at the time of recording this, so I won't spoil what those ads are. I will say keep your ear out in future episodes. I found that starting like that and doing something, a bit smaller that could very easily be like tacked on to another episode was a nice sort of way to ease myself into a genre I'd never written before. Like I said, I'd sort of gotten it into my head that I couldn't write comedy, that I wasn't naturally funny. It was a good sort of baby step into doing that. I wrote 2 ads, and they went down really well with Henry and the rest of the team. One of the characters that features in the second ad I wrote even became like a staple joke amongst our household, because obviously 3 of us living there were working on Less is Morgue, so it was great to have all these in-jokes, and we could reference characters, or we could see something in a movie and be like, oh, this is like this character that we've written. It was not just a great work opportunity, but it was a fantastic social opportunity as well. By that I mean, I was someone who at university didn't have a lot of friends. I have friends. I just want to clarify, I do have friends. But I struggled to make friends at university, with the exception of Henry and a few others. Being a part of the team and joining Prapes and getting to meet and speak with people, voice actors and artists and fellow writers and that devilishly handsome sound designer, it was a real positive influence on me and my life and my general sort of sense of self-worth, which was really nice. The Less is Morgue team are genuinely like some of my closest friends. As someone who, again, like didn't have a close-knit group of like go-to mates at uni, they sort of became my pals, and that's really nice. So with those 2 ads under my belt, I'd sort of proved to myself that, yeah, okay, I can write something that other people think is funny. And that was a huge sort of achievement, to sort of be able to say to myself, I'm not underqualified to be working on this show. I'm not useless. I'm not as bad at writing as I tell myself I am. From there, it was straight into writing scripts and read-throughs and chatting with other members of the team. The first full episode I wrote was sort of in November, December time of 2019. So it was shortly after I'd written the ads. I felt like I'd become gradually more in tune with the world of Less is Morgue. I'd heard the earliest episodes at that point as well. So by that point, I was sort of like, yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it. The problem was I needed a basis for an episode, something that could generate a lot of laughs and a lot of comedy. Well, it was around about that time that there was a certain we had a certain visitor to the house that Henry, Meg, and I were living in. And I'm not going to say any more on that. I'm going to save that story for another time. The true story that inspired the first full Less is Morgue episode that I ever wrote. Maybe I'll make that the next one of these I do. One of the great things about how we write Less is Morgue episodes is that it's always collaborative, and I am someone who believes that any form of creativity is something that can always, and usually always is in some way, a collaborative process. I think Less is More really exemplifies that. It's not like one person will just write a script and that's the one that gets made. You know, there's editing passes taken at it. There's, oh, should we reword this to make the joke work better? You know, suggestions from other members of the team that often end up improving and heightening the material that's already there. And I think that, you know, that in a sort of typically long-winded and roundabout way for me.
These are very long sentences, Charlie.
Sort of works very nicely into a point about how valuable it can be to work with other people. I mentioned just now in a very offhand way my view that creativity is inherently sort of collaborative, whether it's sort of directly or indirectly, whether you're sitting in a writing room like we do for Less is Morgue, or you're working solo but you're taking influence from other media or other things you've read or watched. And I found that active collaborative method of creating is so much more enriching and so much more fun because you can play off each other. You know, this is something that we do when we are writing a Less is Morgue script, is we'll sit on a call and we'll bounce ideas off each other and throw jokes out and see what sticks and what works and suits the characters and the story that we're trying to tell in each episode. And that's something that for the last year and a half, I felt tremendously honoured to be a part of. And I feel very grateful and very humbled to be a part of it. It's not something that I ever take for granted. Me sharing this story isn't a way of saying like, oh, well, if you know the right people, good for you. And if you don't, then, well, that sucks for you. That's not what I'm saying with making this at all. Like, the purpose of this, if anything, is just to entertain, because I think it's a fun anecdote and it's a sort of interesting look back behind the veil at what it's like to have a role within this show. All in all, it has been a tremendous honour and privilege getting to work on Less is Morgue and getting to be a part of Prapes. Through it, I've met some fantastically talented, interesting, and hilarious people. So yeah, February 14th, 2020 rolled around, and the first episode came out. And ever since, the train hasn't really stopped. We're still working on stuff to come out alongside Season 1. We're working very hard on Season 2. I won't say too much more on that, obviously, for the sake of not spoiling anything, but it's been a wild ride. It's definitely been a learning experience getting to be a part of this team. I think on a very personal level, I've learned different things about my ability as a writer and how sometimes the things I tell myself and the self-confidence issues that I sometimes have don't always reflect what I'm actually capable of producing. And I'm glad that this show has given me that affirmation that I'm not as bad as I think I am at the thing I have dedicated my life to. So yeah, I just wanted to share with anyone that was interested the story of how I joined Leicester's Morgue. There you go. That was it. I hope you liked it. In hindsight, was it an interesting anecdote? I don't know. Go and listen to Leicester's Morgue. New episode just came out, and as a warning, make sure you listen to the outros, because if you don't, Scott Thomas will find you. He'll find you. Until next time, whenever that may be, I've been Charlie, and this has been the story of how I joined Leicester's Morgue. Bye!